My father-in-law almost went blind and got a $100,000 hospital bill,
这么贵啊？
all within a week of getting to the US for the very first time. Everybody knows that healthcare in the US is really expensive. And last year, I ate one of these, spent an hour in the hospital, and it cost me $6,000. And I know what you're gonna say, it's like, oh, insurance covers all of it. But you know, that's not necessarily true because there's good insurance and there's bad insurance. It depends on your employer, it depends on how much you're willing to pay. It depends on a billion different factors. And almost 10% of Americans are actually uninsured. And if that's you, that could be disastrous. That's what happened to my father-in-law. And as you've probably heard, insurance in the US can be quite expensive. The average person in the US is actually spending $700 a month on insurance. And if you have a family, you add roughly another $1,200, that's $1,900 a month on insurance, $24,000 a year. By the way, this is all fake money, so don't rob me, all right? I'm about to have a kid. But how much are people actually spending in the hospital? The average per day cost of a hospital visit is around $2,800. And most people stay in the hospital for about 4.5 days. So the average hospital visit costs $12,900. What that means is that with the average person making around $50-something thousand a year, you need to pay 3 months of your salary for your 4.5-day hospital visit. And this is probably why a lot of people actually joke about moving to Asia for their retirement. A lot of people retire to Thailand. They go on medical cruises, and some people decide to just live on cruise ships. So my father-in-law is an absolute workhorse. He's just like the kind of guy who can't sit still, and he's always asking me, what kind of work can I do in the house? He's basically just an amazing guy. He's a total badass. He's super capable with all this stuff. I've been taking him to Home Depot pretty much every couple days to just pick up things that he needs. He loves that place, by the way. But unfortunately, in preparation for them getting here, we cut down 3 trees in our backyard. But he was really excited because there was so much to do. He just cut up the big branches into smaller branches and the tiny branches into even tinier branches. And then one day I come downstairs and he's hurt. I don't even know. I come downstairs and I just see him with his hand over his eye. They have an ice pack, and basically what happened is that he had a brand new axe that we had just picked up, and he's chopping branches, cutting up branches, and one of them just blew up and smacked him in the face. More specifically, smacked him in the eye. Fortunately, my business partner's parents are optometrists, so I sent my Auntie Julie a text with a picture of what his eye looked like, and she was just like, you should probably just take him to see a doctor. And the way that this works in the US, there isn't one unified site where you can go and just find everything. It's not like Chinese hospitals where you go and then the specialist is there in a specific area of the hospital. Everybody has their own little practices, everyone has their own offices, and making an appointment, especially with short notice, is very difficult. I finally got an appointment for him with an optometrist, and they said, ooh, no, eye injury, no, you need an ophthalmologist. Took him to see them, and they were just like,
ooh, this looks really bad. You should just take him to the hospital.
And so off we went to the hospital, which is over an hour away, and while we were there, we had an amazing team. But before I tell you about what happened there, I just wanted to let you know, I'm really excited for the movie Sight, which just hit theaters May 24th. It's the story of Dr. Ming Wang, the first Hollywood movie telling the true story of a Chinese immigrant. He came to the US and he's made some amazing contributions to just eye care. Check out the link below. If you buy a ticket with coupon code IAMIN, you get another ticket for free so you can take a friend. I think it's really important to share these types of stories, and the first couple days right after the movie launches are really important to let Hollywood know that we want to see more stories like this. If you want to share your story on social media, hashtag IAMIN. Tell us about your contributions, tell us about what you've done. I love hearing these types of things. So we end up rushing to the hospital, and I just can't imagine. As someone for whom language is such an integral part of my life, my career, speaking languages, helping others learn English, I think I'd rather lose the ability to speak than to lose my eyesight. That sounds so scary.
哎呀，很害怕，很着急啊，没法跟医生交流啊。
He speaks zero English besides like thank you, no, hello, bye.
不过有个好处就是你跟苏红都在，我还是心里面稍微踏实些。
But it was kind of funny because anytime that we were walking around, it was, you know, me and my father-in-law, a 60-something-year-old Chinese guy, and people were just like, what is going on here? I would start speaking for him and people would look at me like, did you just meet this guy out in the parking lot?
其实我们去的时候也有一些会说中文的，对吧？就是遇到了个护士。
那个女大夫挺好的。
And they told me like, hey, we only allow one person to stay with the patient at any given time, especially in the evening. So I just had to go to the parking garage. Fortunately, the seats in the car push down and I have a mattress that I can use when I'm camping. So I just camped out in the Johns Hopkins Hospital parking garage for the night until they called us and said like, hey, he's ready for his checkup. Okay, it's really hot in there, but let's just keep going. And over the last couple of years, I've started to really learn about the differences between the US and China when it comes to hospitals. Like in the US, they absolutely cannot refuse you for any reason. So, especially with eye injuries, it's considered incredibly serious. So the second that the eye doctor that we had seen called the hospital and said, hey, I'm sending over a patient who just got hurt, the hospital was just like,
Oh shit, okay, what's his name and when are you getting here?
and they were there just waiting. I mean, the second we arrived, they come out and they were like, all right, Mr. Fan, let's go. Took him in, they got an MRI, they started checking everything because basically they said like he was gonna lose his vision. He had a torn retina and they were worried about his optic nerve being detached. They had to take everything very seriously. And this just reminds me of when I got sick in China once. This is back in 2015 or 2016 when I had just started my company. I didn't have very much money and I was just feeling terrible. I had this pain right here and I was just like, uh-oh, is that appendicitis? What's going on? I go to the hospital. Over there, they just told me like, all right, you need to leave a deposit. You need to just pay some money. It was 20,000 RMB just in case we need to do this surgery. At the time, I didn't have any money and I'm freaking out because if I have appendicitis and I need to get a surgery, I don't have the money. What's gonna happen? So they ended up telling me, hey, if you don't have any money, just go home and if it gets worse, then maybe you can come back. So I go home and then I ended up going to another hospital where they checked me out. But when I went there, they did some other different tests and they were just like, oh, wait a second, let's try something. Made me do some things and I farted a lot. And after farting, I felt fine. All it was some gas that was stuck right here, or I guess right here. And once that passed, it was okay. Initially, they just wanted this deposit. In the US, they just rush you in. They don't even ask for insurance. They don't ask for anything besides your ID. And if you don't have an ID, that's fine too. They need to treat you. Around that same time in 2016, my business partner Danny got sick. He had to go to the hospital in Beijing and stayed there for 4 nights. And it didn't even cost him $1,000. And this was in the expensive foreigner ward. Call an ambulance in the US, that's $1,000. If you go to the ER and you stay there a couple hours, that's gonna be several $1,000s. Anyway, so we finally got him checked out and they basically said, yeah, he's got a torn retina. His pupil is just like really messed up. He didn't actually have a pupil, so there was no dilation. It wouldn't get bigger or smaller. I don't like eye stuff, so it was a little bit uncomfortable to look at. Ultimately, I think we got really lucky because they scheduled him for surgery and the team was amazing. The doctors, the nurses, I mean, this is Johns Hopkins, so it's one of the best hospital systems in the world, and it was Hopkins eye clinic. They're so good at this. This is what they do. They were just really nice and they made me, my wife, my mother-in-law, and obviously my father-in-law feel very at ease as everything was happening, even though we didn't know what the results were gonna be. After a 5-hour surgery, he comes out and the doctor is just like, hey,
你这眼罩为什么还戴着呢？
哎，这不是为了拍视频吗？是我的眼睛已经好了，我不需要了，那我就摘了它，扔了得了。
好。
and now my father-in-law has 20/20 vision. However, there's always one thing, and that is the bill. All right, so what were the damages? His final hospital bill, which was actually 2 visits to the emergency room, 1 visit to the surgery center, and then I think 4 follow-up visits afterwards. The bulk of it was still from the surgery itself. But if you start from the emergency room visits, we have $2,400, $340, $540, all from one day. The second visit, $1,500, $560, $540. Then he had to do the surgery a week later. That was $20,764, plus another $9,400. Operating room services, that was $11,000. The new lens that they gave him, sewing his eyeball back together. That was about $1,500. Ultimately, all comes out to $42,000. And talking to the people from the hospital, we were told that in this situation, if you were just like a normal tourist on vacation in the US, came into the hospital with this injury, it would have been 3 times the price. It would have been over $120,000. And I talked to somebody and told me, oh, well, you know, your father-in-law doesn't even live here, so he could just not pay the bill. Obviously, we're not gonna do that. That's not okay. We're so thankful that the team was able to just fix his vision, fix his eye, and he's doing so well now. He's super happy. But there are some things that you need to know. 1, almost every hospital will negotiate these prices. 2, every hospital has programs where they will cover the costs for certain patients, or at least a portion of the costs if they're underinsured, if they're not insured. If you ever run into an issue, make sure to inquire and ask, like, hey, what programs are there that could potentially help me? And then 3, how do you avoid this from happening entirely? 1, I mean, wear eye protection, but 2, if you're coming to the US, you don't live here, you don't have American health insurance, buy travel insurance. When you're coming, you need to buy your ticket, obviously, and when you buy the ticket, you might get an option to buy travel insurance, or specifically accident insurance. There are so many different options, but you need to buy it before you come here. Now, if you're coming for a longer period of time, like my in-laws, that can be fairly expensive, but not nearly as expensive as the cost of a surgery. At the end of the day, we're just so lucky that one of the best eye care centers in the US is near our house, that the team was able to repair his eye, get him back perfect vision, and this time when they came back to the US, we got them travel insurance. Thank you so much to the team that helped my father-in-law, just amazing people. And if you want to hear another amazing story, remember, check out Sight, which just hit theaters. Right now you can get buy one, get one free if you book at the link below with the code IAMIN. These stories are really important and need to be shared. I hope that we get to see more of them. Remember, I am in. What about you? And see you guys next time.